This is more than just a confrontation. It's the moment Jade fights back against a corrupt system that's been trying to destroy her. A system that underestimated her, that thought they could intimidate her. But they're about to learn. Jade Walker doesn't back down. What happens next? You'll want to see this. Stay tuned. Picture this. Jade Walker, a 38-year-old military veteran, standing tall on her quiet South Carolina farm. 6 police officers surround her, weapons drawn, thinking they've got the upper hand. Sweat's dripping down her forehead, but her eyes don't waver. She's been in tougher spots than this. Then, out of the shadows, step Sierra and Titan, her 2 Belgian Malinois military dogs, their tactical vests flashing Special Forces insignia. The lead officer's smirk vanishes. Yeah, the table's just turned. What happens next? Oh, you're going to want to stick around for this? Jade never imagined she'd need her combat skills back home. After 15 years in the military, serving in places like Afghanistan and earning a chest full of medals, she left active duty to find peace. Her 5-acre farm, tucked away in rural South Carolina among towering pines, became her sanctuary. It's where she lived with Sierra and Titan, not just pets, but highly trained partners who'd been by her side in some of the world's most dangerous war zones. Sierra, with her sharp amber eyes, can track a target across miles and understands over 70 commands in multiple languages. Titan, he's the muscle, big, imposing, and trained to neutralize threats with surgical precision. Together, they were a force, saving Jade and her team countless times overseas. Their bond? Unbreakable. They weren't just dogs. They were family, partners in life and death moments. Life on the farm was simple, a far cry from the chaos of war. Jade woke before dawn, ran 5 miles with her dogs, and spent her mornings tending to her vegetable garden. It was her way of keeping the PTSD at bay, finding calm in the routine. But that Tuesday morning, it was anything but calm. She's kneeling in her garden, hands in the dirt, when 3 police cruisers screech up her gravel driveway, lights flashing. 2 more vehicles roll in, boxing in her property like it's a crime scene. 5 cars, 6 armed officers. It's overkill, and Jade knows it. The Willow Creek Police Department wasn't exactly known for playing fair. Complaints about excessive force, especially against black residents, were common. Just last year, a kid got tased for walking home from basketball practice. No consequences, no surprise. Jade's no stranger to this kind of thing, though. She's faced worse overseas, and she's not about to let some small-town cops rattle her. She stands slowly, peeling off her gardening gloves, her mind already in overdrive. Sierra and Titan are inside, fresh off their morning run. With a subtle press of her watch, she signals them to stay put. They know the drill. Out steps Captain James Reynolds, the kind of guy whose reputation precedes him. 20 years on the force, a stack of complaints, mostly from minority residents, all swept under the rug. His smile doesn't reach his cold blue eyes as he calls out, "Ms. Walker, we need a word." Jade doesn't budge, sizing up the 6 officers fanning out in a semicircle. No warrant, no emergency vehicles, just a show of force meant to intimidate. She's seen this playbook before. "Good morning, officers," she says, her voice steady, calm. "How can I help you?" Reynolds stops 10 feet away, hand resting on his gun, all casual menace. "We've got reports of suspicious activity on your property," he says, his tone sharp. "We're here to investigate." Jade takes a slow breath. Suspicious activity. It's the oldest trick in the book. Vague, impossible to disprove, and perfect for targeting anyone who doesn't fit their mold. She knows exactly who's been to her farm, a vet checking on Sierra, and a fellow veteran dropping off bread after church. hardly criminal masterminds. "I'd be happy to answer questions," Jade says, her voice cool, "but I'll need to see a warrant before you step foot on my property." Reynolds's face darkens. He's not used to pushback. Behind him, the officers shift, forming a tighter formation. They're not here for a chat. They're looking for a fight. "We don't need a warrant with probable cause," Reynolds snaps. "Reports of suspicious individuals coming and going at odd hours." Jade's heard it all before. She knows her rights, and she's not about to let this slide. "This is harassment, Captain Reynolds," she says, her voice steady. "Years of crisis negotiation training kicking in. You need specific evidence of a crime to enter my property without a warrant. I don't see an emergency here." Reynolds's eyes flash with anger. He's not used to being called out, especially not by someone like Jade, who knows exactly how to hold her ground. She keeps her posture relaxed, her eyes locked on his, letting him know she's not intimidated. "Let's have a look around," Reynolds barks, waving his officers forward. "Ms. Walker might be hiding something." Two officers head for her barn, another toward her garden shed. Jade's pulse spikes, but she steps forward, blocking their path. "I do not consent to a search," she says, her voice firm. "Show me a warrant, or get off my property." They ignore her. One officer stomps through her vegetable garden, crushing her plants. Another yanks open her shed, rummaging through her tools. It's not about evidence. It's about pushing her to react, giving them an excuse. But one officer catches her eye. Young, name-tag reading Bennett. He looks uneasy, his eyes darting between Jade and his team. Maybe a rookie, not fully bought into the department's tactics. Jade notes it, filing it away. She slips her hand into her pocket, activating a small recording device she started carrying after her first run-in with local cops. Sierra and Titan are still inside, waiting for her signal, their training keeping them invisible for now. Reynolds steps closer, crowding her space, his voice low and venomous. "Your kind always thinks you're special," he sneers, just for her ears. "Military service doesn't make you better than anyone, doesn't change what you are." Jade feels a spark of anger, but her grandfather's words echo in her mind. "They want your anger. It justifies their fear. Don't give it to them." She stays calm, her face a mask of control. The tension's thick, but Jade's not backing down. Stick around. This story's just getting started. The air's thick with tension as Reynolds glares at Jade, his eyes burning with frustration. He's not used to someone standing up to him, especially not someone who knows her rights as well as Jade does. "Keep looking," he barks to his officers, still locked on her. "Check inside the house next." That's when Jade knows this isn't just harassment. They're trying to set her up. No warrant, vague accusations, and now they're gunning for her home. This is personal. "You're not entering my house without a warrant," Jade says, her voice sharp but steady, her military training kicking in like second nature. "That's a constitutional violation, and you know it." Reynolds's lip curls into a sneer. "You threatening an officer, Ms. Walker?" he says, his tone mocking, like he's daring her to snap. "Sounds like a problem to me." The other officers murmur, tightening their semicircle around her. They want her to lose it, to give them a reason to slap cuffs on her. Jade sees it clear as day. They're itching for an excuse to escalate. But she's been in tighter spots than this, and she's not giving them what they want. One officer stands out, though. Officer Bennett, the young one, is shifting his weight, looking uneasy. He's not fully on board with Reynolds's game, and Jade clocks it. He's caught in the middle, a rookie who hasn't been completely pulled into the department's dirty playbook. Jade holds her ground, her voice rising just enough to carry to all of them. "I served this country for 15 years, she says. "I fought for the Constitution overseas, and I expect it to be respected here. What you're doing is illegal." Reynolds laughs, A cold, hollow sound. "Playing the veteran card, huh?" he mocks. "You think anyone cares you played soldier? In my town, you're just another—" "Another what, Captain?" Jade cuts in, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Go on, say it. For the record." The moment freezes. Reynolds's eyes flick to her hand near her pocket, where her recording device is still running. He knows she's got him on tape, and it's throwing him off. His jaw clenches, but he recovers fast. "Search the house," he snaps, his voice betraying a hint of desperation. "If she resists, arrest her for obstruction." Two officers move toward her porch, but Jade steps forward, planting herself in their path like a wall. "This stops now," she says, her voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from leading missions in war zones. "You have no legal right to enter my home." Reynolds steps closer, his hand inching toward his holster, his eyes blazing. "Last warning, Walker," he growls. "Step aside or you're done." Jade doesn't budge. She's face down, worse than Reynolds. Combat zones, life or death stakes. This question mark. "This is just a man with a badge and an ego." Her grandfather's words echo again. The uniform changes nothing. Sierra and Titan are still inside, waiting for her signal, their training keeping them locked in place. Then a crack in the tension. Officer Bennett speaks up, his voice shaky but firm. "Captain," he says, glancing nervously at his colleagues, "dispatch just called in a traffic accident on Highway 16, multiple vehicles." Reynolds doesn't even look at him. "They've got patrol cars for that," he mutters, waving it off, his focus still on Jade. Bennett pushes harder, quieter, but insistent. "Sir, don't you think we should—" "Did I ask for your opinion, Bennett?" Reynolds snaps, shutting him down. "Stay focused." Bennett goes quiet, but Jade catches the hesitation in his eyes. She knows that look, someone caught in a system that's not as clean as they thought. It clicks for her then. This isn't random. 3 weeks ago, she filed a complaint against Reynolds after catching him on video, harassing a black teenager outside a grocery store. She sent it straight to the county review board, bypassing the police chief, Reynolds's cousin. She didn't expect much to come of it, but now it's clear this is retaliation. Through the kitchen window, Jade spots Sierra and Titan, still as statues, their eyes locked on her. They're ready, just waiting for her command. Then she notices something else, one officer slipping behind her shed out of sight from the others. His movements are too careful, too deliberate. Her combat instincts scream, something's wrong. She keeps her eyes on him, barely moving. Then she sees it. He pulls something from his pocket and slips it into her storage bin. Her blood runs cold. They're not just here to intimidate. They're planting evidence. The realization hits hard, but Jade keeps her cool. She's been in worse traps than this. Everything's falling into place. The excessive force, the vague accusations, the push to search her property. They're building a case to take her down. Reynolds is still watching, waiting for her to crack. But Jade's face gives nothing away. The dogs stay hidden, their training keeping them out of sight. She has to play this smart. Her phone vibrates in her pocket. Her security system's been triggered. Her cameras caught the officer planting evidence, and the footage is already uploading to a secure cloud server. She's got them. Reynolds steps closer, smirking. "Think you've got it all figured out, don't you?" he says, his voice low and taunting. Jade stays silent, letting the quiet speak for her. Sierra and Titan are ready. She's ready. The question is, what's Reynolds's next move? The tension's so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Reynolds is in Jade's face, his hand hovering near his gun, trying to intimidate her. He's banking on her losing her cool, but Jade's a former special ops soldier. She's not fazed. Her recording device is still running in her pocket, and her security cameras just caught one of his officers slipping something into her shed. She's got them dead to rights, and Reynolds doesn't even know it yet. "Control those dogs, Walker," Reynolds snarls, his voice shaky with frustration. He's starting to sense he's losing control. "This is intimidation of police officers. You know that's a crime, right?" Jade's face doesn't flinch. She's been through too much to let this guy rattle her. "My dogs aren't here to intimidate," she says, her voice low and steady. "They're trained to protect. Right now, they're just doing their job." Sierra and Titan are still inside, barely visible through the window, their tactical vests blending into the shadows. They're locked in, waiting for Jade's signal. These aren't your average pets. They're military grade, trained to take down threats with precision. Reynolds isn't used to dealing with anything like them, and it's throwing him off. Jade stands tall, her posture calm but unyielding. She gives a short, sharp whistle, barely audible, but Sierra and Titan snap to attention. In perfect sync, they step out of the house, silent and controlled. Sierra moves to the right, her amber eyes locked on the officers. Titan plants himself between Jade and Reynolds, his massive frame a clear warning. The air shifts. The officers freeze, hands twitching toward their weapons, but something about the dog's calm, focused demeanor stops them cold. "Those are military working dogs," Officer Bennett says, his voice quiet but carrying weight. The rookie's standing off to the side, looking more uncomfortable by the second. "Special forces," he adds, and you can hear the unease spreading through the other officers. Reynolds shoots Bennett a glare, his face red with anger. He's not just losing control of Jade, he's losing his own team. Jade seizes the moment. "These are federal assets," she says, her voice cutting through the tension. Sierra and Titan are trained for special operations. They respond to over 100 commands, verbal and nonverbal. Right now, they're in defensive mode. Let's keep it that way. The implication lands hard. One word from Jade, and these dogs could switch to offensive in a heartbeat. Reynolds's hand hovers near his gun, but he's hesitating now. He's starting to realize he's in over his head. "This is intimidation," he tries again, but his voice is weaker, like he's grasping at straws. "You're threatening us." Bennett steps forward, surprising everyone. "This isn't intimidation," he says, his voice steadier now. "We showed up with 6 armed officers, no warrant, to question one woman. That's not an investigation, Captain. That's harassment." The silence that follows is deafening. Jade's heart skips a beat. Bennett's breaking ranks, calling out his own captain. She sees the crack in Reynolds's armor widen. She jumps on it. "Captain Reynolds," she says, her voice calm but commanding, "I've asked you to leave my property multiple times. You've damaged my garden, searched my shed without consent, and tried to plant evidence. It's all on my security footage, live streaming to my attorney right now." The officer who was at the shed shifts nervously, exchanging a glance with his partner. They know they're caught. Jade's phone buzzes in her pocket. A text from her lawyer, Marcus Gaines, confirming he's got the footage. Reynolds doesn't know it yet, but the noose is tightening. Reynolds tries to regain control, his voice rising. "Search the house," he barks. "If she resists, arrest her." But before the officers can move, a new sound cuts through the standoff, the rumble of a vehicle. A white van pulls up and out steps Lisa Chen from Channel 7 News, camera rolling. "Good morning," she calls, her voice confident. "Lisa Chen, Channel 7. Got a tip about police activity at a veteran's home. Care to explain, Captain?" Reynolds's face twists with fury. "This is an active investigation," he snaps. "Get off this property." Lisa doesn't blink. "I'm on a public road, Captain. I've got every right to film. Got a warrant for this search?" Or is this just harassment? The game's changing fast. The media's here, Jade's got the footage, and Bennett's starting to waver. Jade feels the momentum shift. She steps forward, her voice ringing out. "You're trespassing, Captain. No warrant, no probable cause, just threats and planted evidence. Leave now." Reynolds hesitates, his hand still near his gun. But the cameras, the dogs, and Bennett's defiance are too much. He's losing control, and he knows it. Reynolds is frozen, his usual swagger crumbling. Lisa Chen from Channel 7 News is filming, her camera catching every move, and a small crowd of neighbors and veterans is gathering at the edge of Jade's property. The power's shifting, and Reynolds knows it. His hands still near his gun, but he's hesitating, his eyes darting between Jade, the dogs, and the growing audience. Jade stands tall, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You're making a mistake, Captain," she says, calm but firm. "You've crossed every line and it's all on tape. Step back now, or this is only going to get worse for you." The air's electric. Even Reynolds' own officers are starting to look uneasy, their confidence shaken. Bennett, the rookie, steps forward again, his voice shaky but resolute. "Captain, we should stand down," he says. "This isn't right. We don't have a warrant, and this feels like harassment." Reynolds wheels on him, his face red with fury. "You want to lecture me, Bennett?" he snaps. "Stay in line." But Bennett doesn't back down. "I'm not lecturing, sir. I'm saying this is wrong. We're crossing a line here." Jade feels a spark of hope. Bennett's standing up, calling out his captain in front of everyone. It's a crack in the system, and she's ready to pry it open. "Captain Reynolds," she says, her voice steady, "I've told you to leave my property. You've trashed my garden, tried to plant evidence, and threatened me. My security system's got it all, and it's streaming to my lawyer. You're done." Reynolds' jaw tightens, but before he can respond, a new sound cuts through. A low rumble of engines. 3 state police cruisers pull into the driveway, lights flashing. The crowd murmurs, and Reynolds' face pales. The cavalry's here, and it's not on his side. A state officer, a woman with a no-nonsense vibe, steps out, her badge gleaming. "Captain Reynolds," she says, her voice calm but authoritative, "stand down. This is under state jurisdiction now." Reynolds opens his mouth to argue, but she shuts him down with a look. "You've overstepped," she says. "No warrant, no probable cause, and credible reports of evidence tampering. You're not in charge anymore." The other officers exchanged nervous glances, their hands dropping from their weapons. Bennett lets out a quiet breath, relief flickering across his face. Jade's heart is still racing, but she feels a small victory taking root. She's not out of the woods yet, but the tide's turning. Reynolds takes a step back, his eyes burning with anger. "This isn't over, Walker," he mutters, low enough that only she can hear. He turns to his team, barking, "Let's go!" His officers hesitate, then follow, piling into their cruisers. Bennett lingers for a moment, meeting Jade's eyes. "I'm sorry," he says quietly. "I should have spoken up sooner." Jade nods, her voice steady. "You did the right thing, Bennett. That's what matters." As the police cruisers pull out, Lisa Chen approaches, her camera still rolling. "Jade, that was incredible," she says. "We've got everything on tape. This is going viral." Jade gives her a small nod, her mind already racing ahead. The cameras, the footage, the state police. It's a win, but she knows Reynolds won't let this go. This was personal, tied to the complaint she filed against him weeks ago for harassing a black teenager. She bypassed his cousin, the police chief, and sent it straight to the county board. Now it's clear this was payback. Her phone buzzes, a text from her lawyer, Marcus Gaines. "Footage received. State police are taking over. Stay sharp. This isn't over." Jade tucks the phone away, her eyes scanning the horizon. Sierra and Titan are still at her side, their presence a steady reminder of her strength. Lisa lowers her camera for a moment, her voice softer. "You're not alone in this, Jade. The community's behind you. The story's bigger than Willow Creek now." Jade looks out at the crowd, veterans, neighbors, even a few local business owners who've shown up. She feels a surge of gratitude. "I know," she says, "and I'm not backing down." As the state officers start securing the scene, Jade's mind shifts to what's next. Reynolds might have retreated, but this is just the first battle. Her security footage caught the planted evidence, and the media's here to shine a light on it all. But something tells her this goes deeper than one corrupt captain. The dust's settling on Jade's South Carolina farm, but the air still feels heavy. Reynolds and his officers are gone, their cruisers disappearing down the gravel driveway. But Jade knows this isn't the end. The state police are securing her property, and Lisa Chen from Channel 7 News is still filming, making sure the world sees what went down. Jade's heart is still pounding, but she's steady, her military training keeping her focused. Then another vehicle pulls up, an SUV with government plates. Two men in suits step out, their jackets sporting Department of Defense insignia. Jade's instincts kick in. This isn't random. These guys are here for a reason, and it's not just to check on her. The taller one approaches, his demeanor all business, but with a hint of urgency. "Ms. Walker," he says, extending a hand. "Agent Michaels, Department of Defense. We got an alert about potential harassment of a former Special Ops asset." Jade's mind races. The Sentinel Protocol, a system she helped design to protect veterans, must have flagged what happened. She never thought it had reached this level, but here they are. She shakes his hand, keeping her expression neutral. "Appreciate you showing up," she says. "What's your read on this?" Michael scans the scene, the state police, the news van, the crowd of neighbors and veterans at the edge of her property. "Situation's under control for now," he says, "but this is bigger than a local dispute. Interference with someone of your background, especially with civil rights violations, is federal jurisdiction. We're documenting everything." Jade nods, the pieces clicking. This isn't just about Reynolds or her complaint against him for harassing that teenager. Something deeper's at play. "How far does this go?" she asks, her voice steady but probing. Michaels's eyes narrow slightly, like he's weighing how much to share. "We suspect this isn't just about you," he says. "There's a pattern. Minority property owners near a proposed resort development being targeted. We're looking into whether Reynolds and others are tied to the developers. Your footage is a goldmine." Jade's stomach tightens. A resort development. Her farm borders the planned site, and suddenly the vague, suspicious activity accusations make sense. This isn't just personal. It's about land, money, and power. "So they're trying to push us out," she says, more to herself than Michaels. "We're digging into it," Michaels replies. "Financial records, communications, anything linking the police to the developers. Your security system's already helping us build the case." Sheriff Daniels, who's been quietly observing, steps forward. He's ex-Army, and there's a respect in his posture when he addresses the agents. "This complicates things," he says, almost to himself. "But I'm glad someone's stepping in." Jade glances at him. Daniels has been solid, not like Reynolds' crew. "What's your take, Sheriff?" she asks. Daniels sighs, his face grim. "Reynolds has been untouchable too long. If the feds are involved, we might finally clean house." Michaels nods. "We're coordinating with state and local authorities. We'll need your cooperation, Sheriff, and Ms. Walker's footage. This could go high up." Jade's phone buzzes. A text from her lawyer, Marcus Gaines. "Feds are in. Footage is secure. This is going national. Stay vigilant." She tucks the phone away, her mind racing. The resort, the harassment, the planted evidence. It's all connected. And now, the Department of Defense is involved. This is bigger than she ever imagined. Lisa Chen approaches, her camera off for the moment. "Jade, this story's blowing up," she says, her eyes bright with determination. "We're not just local news anymore. National outlets are picking it up. People are rallying behind you." Jade looks out at the crowd, veterans, neighbors, even strangers who heard about the standoff. It's not just her fight anymore. "I'm not doing this alone," she says. "This is for everyone who's been pushed around." Daniels nods, his voice low. "We're with you, Jade. This department's got some cleaning up to do, and I'm making sure it happens." The state officers are wrapping up, securing the scene, while Michaels and his partner confer quietly. Jade feels a shift in the air, not just relief, but momentum. The cameras, the feds, the community, it's all coming together. But she knows Reynolds and whoever's behind this won't go down easy. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across her farm, Jade stands with Sierra and Titan at her side. Her phone buzzes again. Another message from Marcus. "State's taking lead on the investigation. Prepare for the next phase." Jade exhales, her resolve hardening. This isn't just about her 5 acres anymore. It's about exposing a system that's been preying on people like her for too long. She's ready for whatever's next. The sun's dipping low, painting Jade's farm in golden light. But the calm is temporary. Federal agents from the Department of Defense are on her property, state police are securing the scene, and a crowd of supporters, veterans, neighbors, and locals stands at the edge of her land. Jade's not just fighting for her 5 acres anymore. She's become the face of a movement against corruption in Willow Creek. Jade's on her porch, Sierra and Titan at her side, their tactical vests gleaming. Her phone's been buzzing nonstop. Texts from her lawyer, Marcus Gaines, and updates from Lisa Chen, the Channel 7 journalist who's been all over this story. The media's turning this into a national conversation, and Jade knows the stakes are higher than ever. Sheriff Daniels approaches, his face serious but steady. He's ex-Army like Jade, and he's been a rare ally in this mess. "Miss Walker," he says, stopping in front of her, "I owe you an apology. What happened today, none of this should have gone down." Jade studies him, her expression unreadable. She's heard apologies before, but Daniels feels different, genuine, like he's ready to back it up. "Apologies don't fix this, Sheriff," she says, her voice calm but firm. "What matters is what you do next. Words are cheap without action." Daniels nods, his jaw tight. "You're right. I've already talked to the state's attorney. I'm cooperating fully with the feds, and I'm pushing for a review of every complaint against Reynolds. This department's getting a hard reset." Jade gives a slight nod, a flicker of respect in her eyes. It's not a victory yet, but it's a start. Her phone buzzes again. Marcus. "FBI's arriving tomorrow. Your footage is locked in, and the prosecutor's office is on board. Stay sharp." Her heart skips. The FBI. This is going national, fast. She tucks the phone away as Daniels speaks again. "The developers are making moves on nearby properties," he says. "We need to act quick." Jade's mind races. The resort development, it's the key to all this. Her farm and others owned by minorities are in the way of a big money project. The harassment, the planted evidence, Reynolds's vendetta, it's all tied to forcing people off their land for profit. "They're not stopping," she says, her voice hard, "but neither am I." Before Daniels can respond, Lisa Chen calls Jade from across the yard. "Jade, I've got something big," she says, her voice urgent as she jogs over. "I've been digging into the developers, and I found a paper trail, financial ties between them and Reynolds's department, documents, photos, even a whistleblower willing to testify." Jade's pulse quickens. This is the break they've been waiting for. "Where's the evidence now?" she asks. "Send it to Marcus," Lisa says. "The prosecutor's reviewing it. This could blow the whole thing open." Jade nods, her mind already strategizing. "Good work, Lisa. Keep pushing." She glances at Daniels. "We need to move fast before they cover their tracks." Daniels agrees. "I'm on it. We'll coordinate with the feds and make sure this sticks." As the evening settles in, more vehicles arrive. More media, local veterans groups, even a few state officials. Jade's farm is now a hub of activity, a rallying point for a community fed up with being pushed around. The energy's shifting. Hope is replacing fear. Jade's phone buzzes again. Marcus. "Get ready for a public showdown. The developers are panicking, but this'll get ugly before it gets better." She exhales, steadying herself. Sierra and Titan sense her focus, their ears perked, ready for action. She steps off the porch, addressing the growing crowd. "This isn't just about me," she says, her voice carrying strength. "This is about everyone who's been silenced, pushed out, or ignored. We're standing up together, and we're not stopping until justice is done." The crowd murmurs in agreement, some clapping, others nodding. Veterans salute her, neighbors cheer. Jade feels the weight of their support, but also the responsibility. This fight's bigger than her now. As the last of the vehicles pull away, Jade stands with her dogs, watching the horizon. The feds are coming, the media's all in, and the community's rallying. But the developers and their allies won't go down without a fight. Jade knows the road ahead's going to be rough, but she's been through worse. The next few days were a blur of constant motion. The investigation had shifted into high gear, and Jade was caught in the whirlwind. The FBI, state police, and federal agents had all converged on Willow Creek, combing through records, gathering evidence, and interviewing witnesses. It was becoming clear that what had started as a small-town case of harassment was now a full-blown federal investigation into corruption at the highest levels. Jade had known that there was something deeply wrong with the system, but seeing the gears of justice finally start to turn was something else entirely. The momentum had shifted, and people who had been silent for too long were beginning to speak out. The floodgates had opened, and there was no turning back now, but with that momentum came its own set of challenges. As the investigation grew more complex, so did the threats. Jade's property, once her sanctuary, now felt like the front lines of a war. Every knock on the door made her heart race. Every passing vehicle felt like a potential danger. But she couldn't let fear dictate her actions. She had come this far, and there was no turning back. That afternoon, Jade was in her kitchen going over some documents with Marcus Gaines when she got a call. It was from Lisa Chen, the journalist who had been covering the story from the beginning. "Jade, I've got some information you need to hear," Lisa said, her voice urgent. "I've been digging into the developers behind the resort project, and I've found something that could blow this whole thing wide open." Jade straightened, her focus shifting immediately. "What did you find?" "There's a financial connection between the developers and several members of the Willow Creek Police Department, including Captain Reynolds," Lisa explained. "It's not just about land grabs. There's a whole network of shady deals happening under the radar. I've got documents, photos, and testimonies that tie them all together." Jade's mind raced. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The developers, the police department, the land. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, and Lisa had just uncovered the missing link. "Where are the documents now?" Jade asked, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. "I've already sent them to your lawyer," Lisa replied. "The prosecutor's office is reviewing them as we speak. But there's more. I've spoken to a former employee of the development company who's willing to testify. They've got insider knowledge that could turn everything on its head." Jade felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the moment they had been working toward. The evidence was in their hands, and now it was time to make the system answer for what it had done. "Keep me posted," Jade said, her voice calm but determined. "And thank you, Lisa. You've done more than anyone could ask for." "I'm not stopping now," Lisa said. "I'll be with you every step of the way." Jade hung up the phone, her mind whirring with the possibilities. The investigation was no longer just about proving the abuse of power by one officer. It was about exposing a network of corruption that had been thriving in the shadows for years. The developers had used their connections to bend the law in their favor, and the police had been their enforcers. But that was about to change. The evidence Lisa had uncovered could be the key to taking down the entire operation. Just as Jade was processing the weight of this new development, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Sheriff Daniels. "We've got a break in the case. The developers are moving on the property near yours. We need to act fast. Get ready." Jade's stomach tightened. The developers weren't wasting any time. They were trying to push their agenda forward, no matter the cost. She quickly messaged Marcus. "The developers are on the move. What's the next step?" Within minutes, she received a response. "Get ready for a public confrontation. We've got the backing we need now, but this is going to get ugly before it gets better." Jade's heart raced, but she knew there was no time to waste. She glanced out the window, her eyes scanning the perimeter. Sierra and Titan, the two Belgian Malinois, were sitting just inside the door, their alert eyes watching her every move. She gave them a quick, silent signal, and they both moved to their positions, their training kicking in. "I'm ready," Jade muttered to herself. She wasn't just ready for the fight ahead. She was prepared to win it. Minutes later, the familiar sound of vehicles pulling into her driveway shattered the quiet. This time, it wasn't just the developers' trucks. Several police cruisers, accompanied by FBI agents, arrived with a force that sent a ripple of anxiety through Jade's system. But she didn't flinch. The cavalry was here. Jade stepped outside, her face set in determination. She had been fighting for her property, her rights, and the rights of the other minority property owners targeted by the corrupt system. Now she was about to make sure that the people responsible for the years of harassment were finally held accountable. Sheriff Daniels stepped out of his cruiser, his expression stern but resolute. "This is it," he said quietly, his voice low. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment." Jade nodded, her resolve firm. "Let's do this." The group of federal agents and state police officers began to take their positions, ensuring that the developers would have no chance to intimidate the residents of Willow Creek any longer. The media vans were already parked at the edge of the property, cameras ready to roll. The eyes of the public were upon them. Jade stood in front of the crowd, flanked by her two dogs, their tactical vests gleaming in the sunlight. This was her moment. This wasn't just about one woman standing up against injustice. It was about a community coming together to demand accountability. The developers, along with several local officials, approached, their expressions ranging from smug to anxious. They weren't prepared for what was about to unfold. As they reached the center of the driveway, Jade stepped forward, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "Gentlemen," she began, her tone unwavering, "we have a few things to discuss." Before they could respond, a series of FBI agents and state police moved in, surrounding the group with the kind of precision that could only come from years of military training. The developers froze, realizing too late that the tide had turned. "Do you know what this is about?" one of the developers asked nervously, his voice cracking slightly. "I do," Jade said, her eyes locking onto his. "And you will too once the evidence comes out. This ends today. No more intimidation, no more corruption. The developers were caught. The investigation had reached its breaking point, and there was no turning back now. The documents Lisa had uncovered, the insider testimony, and the mounting pressure from the community were all coming to a head. Jade stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest, as the weight of what was happening began to sink in. She had been fighting for so long, but now it was clear. Victory was within reach. Jade stepped outside, her face set in determination. She had been fighting for her property, her rights, and the rights of the other minority property owners targeted by the corrupt system. Now she was about to make sure that the people responsible for the years of harassment were finally held accountable. Sheriff Daniels stepped out of his cruiser, his expression stern but resolute. "This is it," he said quietly, his voice low. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment." Jade nodded, her resolve firm. "Let's do this." The group of federal agents and state police officers began to take their positions, ensuring that the developers would have no chance to intimidate the residents of Willow Creek any longer. The media vans were already parked at the edge of the property, cameras ready to roll. The eyes of the public were upon them. Jade stood in front of the crowd, flanked by her two dogs, their tactical vests gleaming in the sunlight. This was her moment. This wasn't just about one woman standing up against injustice. It was about a community coming together to demand accountability. The developers, along with several local officials, approached, their expressions ranging from smug to anxious. They weren't prepared for what was about to unfold. As they reached the center of the driveway, Jade stepped forward, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "Gentlemen," she began, her tone unwavering, "we have a few things to discuss." Before they could respond, a series of FBI agents and state police moved in, surrounding the group with the kind of precision that could only come from years of military training. The developers froze, realizing too late that the tide had turned. "Do you know what this is about?" one of the developers asked nervously, his voice cracking slightly. "I do," Jade said, her eyes locking onto his. "And you will too once the evidence comes out. This ends today. No more intimidation, no more corruption." The developers were caught. The investigation had reached its breaking point, and there was no turning back now. The documents Lisa had uncovered, the insider testimony, and the mounting pressure from the community were all coming to a head. Jade stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest, as the weight of what was happening began to sink in. She had been fighting for so long, but now it was clear. Victory was within reach. The wheels are turning. The developers are officially in custody. We've got the paperwork to move forward with the civil lawsuit. This is going to take down a lot of people. Jade allowed herself a moment to breathe. The battle wasn't over. It never would be. But this was the victory she had been fighting for. The system had finally been forced to reckon with its own corruption. The developers, the police, and the people who thought they could get away with everything. Now, they were facing the consequences. "Thank you," Jade said, her voice low as she turned to Sheriff Daniels. "This wouldn't have been possible without you." Daniels gave her a nod, his face showing signs of exhaustion, but also relief. "You did most of the work. I just helped keep the right people on track." Jade turned to the rest of the gathered crowd, her heart swelling with pride. "This isn't just my victory," she said, her voice carrying across the group. "This is a victory for everyone who has ever been pushed around. We've shown that standing up to injustice can change the system. This is just the beginning." Behind her, Sierra and Titan stood still, their presence a reminder of the strength and discipline that had carried her through this fight. They had been by her side every step of the way, just as the community had. Jade walked forward, her shoulders squared, her steps confident. She knew that while today was a victory, tomorrow would bring new challenges. But she was ready for whatever came next. With the support of the community, the power of the law behind her, and her own unwavering determination, she knew that justice would prevail. The days following the arrest of the developers were a whirlwind. News outlets across the country picked up the story, reporting on the corruption in Willow Creek and the groundbreaking efforts to expose it. Jade's fight had captured the public's attention, turning her from an isolated target of injustice into a symbol of resistance. The next few weeks were spent watching as the investigation unfolded. With the developers in custody and the police officers involved in the scandal-facing criminal charges, Jade had become a central figure in the fight for accountability. The FBI and state police continued to gather evidence, and the list of individuals connected to the corrupt network was growing longer by the day. Each new piece of evidence uncovered sent shockwaves through the community, and the pressure on local officials continued to mount. But for Jade, the work wasn't done. She had always known that one victory wasn't enough to dismantle a system as entrenched as the one that had targeted her. The developers, the police, the town officials, they were just a part of the larger problem. And as much as the arrests were a significant step forward, Jade knew there was more to be done. Every morning she rose before dawn, as she had done during her military career. She ran 5 miles with Sierra and Titan, the dog still as disciplined and alert as ever. Running had become her therapy, a way to clear her mind and prepare for the work ahead. The dogs, always by her side, had become her constant companions, reminding her of the battles they had fought together and the ones that still lay ahead. Jade spent her afternoons meeting with Marcus Gaines, reviewing documents, and strategizing the next steps in the civil lawsuit. The evidence was overwhelming, and the case was strong. But Jade knew that the developers had deep pockets and powerful connections. The fight was far from over, and she couldn't afford to let her guard down. One afternoon, while sitting in her office, she received an unexpected call from Sheriff Daniels. "Jade," he said, his voice serious, "I've got something you need to see." "What is it?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "There's been some new developments," Daniels replied. "I can't go into details right now, but we've uncovered something that could be the missing link in the case. I need you to come to the station." Jade's stomach tightened. She didn't like the sound of it, but she trusted Daniels. If he was calling her in, it was important. She hung up the phone, grabbed her keys, and signaled for Sierra and Titan to follow her as she headed out the door. The drive to the sheriff's station was quiet, the tension in the air palpable. Jade's mind raced, wondering what new information had surfaced. When she arrived, Daniels was waiting for her at the door. "I need you to follow me," he said, his face tight with concern. He led her into a back room where a stack of papers sat on a desk. At first glance, they seemed like just more evidence, but as Daniels flipped through the pages, Jade's heart sank. "This is it," Daniels said, laying a thick stack of documents in front of her. "We've uncovered a series of transactions linking the developers to local officials in 3 other counties. They've been using their influence to push through land acquisitions, and it looks like some of the officials involved have been accepting bribes in exchange for pushing their plans forward." Jade picked up the first document, her eyes scanning the details. The evidence was damning. There were payments made to local officials, under-the-table deals, and even an email chain discussing how to manipulate the system to force people off their land. "This is big," she whispered, her mind already racing through the implications. "This is bigger than just Willow Creek. These people have been doing this for years." Daniels nodded grimly. "That's what I'm afraid of. It's not just about these developers anymore. It's about a whole network of corruption that's been running under the radar for far too long." Jade felt a cold rush of anger flood through her veins. She had known the system was broken, but seeing the extent of the corruption was overwhelming. The developers weren't just targeting her, they had been systematically taking advantage of vulnerable communities across the state. "I want this to end," Jade said, her voice hard. "We need to take this to the next level. These people can't get away with this." Daniels looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of admiration and wariness. "I know you're ready, but this won't be easy. We're talking about a deep network of people who will do anything to protect themselves. If we go public with this, there will be backlash. You could be putting yourself in even more danger." Jade didn't hesitate. "I've been in danger my whole life. This is the fight I've been waiting for. We need to expose this. All of it." Daniels gave a heavy sigh, then nodded. "All right, we'll do it your way. But we need to be smart. We have to move carefully. The last thing we want is for them to cover their tracks before we can make a move." Jade took a deep breath. She knew the road ahead would be even more treacherous than what she had already faced. But she was ready. She had fought wars on foreign soil, dealt with enemies who were far more dangerous than these developers, and come out on top. This time, the fight was for justice, not just for her, but for the countless others who had been exploited by a corrupt system. "I'm ready," Jade said, her voice unwavering. "Let's bring them down." The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and gathering more evidence. With the new information from Daniels and the ongoing support from the federal agents, the case began to take on a life of its own. The media continued to follow the story closely, reporting on every new twist and turn, and the pressure on local officials grew with each passing day. Jade knew the developers wouldn't go down without a fight. They had money, influence, and connections that reached into the highest levels of government. But what they didn't have was the truth on their side, and the truth, Jade knew, was a powerful weapon. As the investigation unfolded, Jade found herself not only fighting for justice, but also rebuilding a sense of community that had been fractured by years of corruption. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down, afraid to speak out, were now coming together, sharing their stories and standing in solidarity. The fight wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the future of the community, about ensuring that no one else would have to suffer at the hands of a system that had long been rigged against them. The battle was hard, and the odds were still stacked against her, but Jade felt a new sense of purpose, a purpose that went beyond revenge. It was about creating lasting change, about breaking the cycle of oppression and building something better in its place. As the days turned into weeks, the pressure continued to mount on the developers and the corrupt officials who had backed them. Jade knew the final showdown was coming, and she was ready for it. But for now, she would continue to fight, to stand tall and unwavering, knowing that every step she took brought her one step closer to justice. The pressure on the developers and their allies had reached a boiling point. The investigation was growing in scope, and with every new revelation, the walls around those responsible for the corruption began to close in. As Jade stood at the center of it all, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. From the quiet farm in rural South Carolina to becoming the face of a movement that was shaking the very foundations of the system, her journey had been anything but ordinary. But as the story gained national attention, so too did the opposition. The developers were well connected, and their legal team was formidable. There were whispers of backroom deals, of attempts to discredit Jade and undermine the case. But Jade had been through worse, and she wasn't about to back down now. The days were filled with meetings with Marcus Gaines, her attorney, and strategizing with federal agents, local law enforcement, and the growing network of veterans who had rallied behind her. The case was moving forward, but there were still hurdles to overcome. Every new document uncovered, every piece of evidence gathered, seemed to only lead to more questions. One evening, as Jade was sitting in her living room, reviewing documents and making notes, she received a call from Marcus. She could hear the tension in his voice as soon as she picked up the phone. "Jade, we need to talk," he said. "I've just been briefed on something that's come to light in the last 24 hours. This is big, really big." Jade sat up straight, her heart racing. "What's going on?" "I've just received a tip," Marcus continued. "Someone from the development company has reached out. They're willing to testify. They have information on the bribes, the illegal land deals, and more. But there's a catch. They're only willing to talk if we can guarantee their safety." Jade's pulse quickened. This was the break they needed. The tip could be the key to not only bringing down the developers, but also exposing the entire network of corruption. "Who is it?" Jade asked, her voice steady despite the urgency she felt. "A former project manager," Marcus replied. "They've been working with the developers for years. They've seen everything, and they're ready to come forward. But they're afraid of retaliation. They're worried about their life." Jade took a deep breath, processing the gravity of the situation. This was more than just a legal battle now. This was about protecting lives, ensuring that those who stepped forward would be safe from the same people who had already shown they were willing to do anything to protect their interests. "We need to make sure they're protected," Jade said firmly. "We'll find a way. This is our chance to take them down for good." Marcus agreed. "I'm going to set up a meeting with them, but I'll need you here to help with the strategy. We can't let this slip through our fingers." "Let me know when," Jade replied, already feeling the weight of the next phase of the battle settling over her. "I'll be ready." The next few days were filled with preparation. Jade met with Marcus and the federal agents, ensuring that the former project manager's safety was top priority. The plan was simple: meet in a secure location, have the whistleblower provide testimony, and then take immediate steps to ensure they were protected from any retaliation. The tension in the air was palpable as the meeting day approached. Jade, Marcus, and a team of federal agents arrived at a remote location, a small warehouse far from the public eye. The air was thick with the weight of what was about to happen. This wasn't just another step in the investigation. This was the moment that would break the case wide open. As they entered the warehouse, the former project manager, a middle-aged man with a weary expression, stood waiting. His eyes were filled with fear, but there was also a sense of determination. He knew what was at stake, and he was ready to speak the truth. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," Jade said, her voice calm but full of resolve. "We're here to make sure you're safe, and we're here to listen. What you have to say could change everything." The man nodded, his hands shaking slightly. "I've seen things," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "Things that should have never happened. The developers, what they were doing, it wasn't just about land. It was about control, manipulation, and money. They were using their connections to push people off their properties, and they didn't care who got hurt." Jade nodded, listening intently as the man began to lay out the details. He spoke about the bribes, the secret deals made with local officials, and how the developers had used intimidation to force people into selling their land at a fraction of its worth. He explained how they had orchestrated the harassment campaigns with the help of corrupt police officers and local politicians, all in the name of profit. As the former project manager recounted the details, Jade's mind raced. This wasn't just about one corrupt officer or a small group of developers. It was a widespread conspiracy that had been systematically abusing its power for years. The scale of the operation was staggering, and it was clear that the corruption went far deeper than she had ever imagined. I've seen them destroy families, push people out of their homes without any regard for the consequences, the man continued, his voice breaking with emotion. I couldn't stand by anymore. I had to do something. Jade placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a sense of comfort and reassurance. You've done the right thing. You're helping to take down something that's been hurting so many people. Your testimony will make all the difference. With the meeting concluded, Jade and the team worked quickly to ensure the whistleblower's safety. Federal agents would escort him to a secure location where he would be under protection for as long as necessary. Jade watched as the man was escorted out of the warehouse, knowing that his bravery would help bring down the networks of corruption that had targeted her and so many others. The following days were a blur of activity as the whistleblower's testimony was added to the growing pile of evidence. With this new information, the federal agents moved quickly, preparing to make arrests that would shake the foundations of the corrupt system. Jade knew that the final showdown was coming, but this time she wasn't fighting alone. She had the truth, the law, and an entire community standing behind her. The developers, the corrupt officers, and the politicians who had been profiting off of the exploitation of others were about to face the consequences of their actions. It had taken months, but Jade had finally built the case that would bring them down. The battle was far from over, but she could see the end in sight. The light at the end of the tunnel was growing brighter with every step she took, and she was ready for whatever came next.